I knew something was wrong the moment my son whispered, "Don't tell the neighbors you're my mother." He said it fast, barely moving his lips, like he was scared someone might overhear. Like I was something to hide. A stain on the picture he'd spent years painting. I didn't ask him why. I didn't ask a thing. I just smiled politely at the man in khaki shorts watering his perfect lawn and gave a little wave, the kind you give when you know your role. Like a visitor. Like a stranger. It had been a long trip from Memphis to Westchester County. 2 flights, a layover in Charlotte, and a cab ride that cost more than my electric bill. I'd brought a small suitcase and a tin of my sweet potato pie, the kind Marcus used to eat with his hands when he was barely tall enough to reach the counter. My knees were stiff from the journey, aching with every step. But I didn't complain. I never have. Not when I worked back-to-back shifts at the care facility. Not when I paid for his college. Not when I signed the papers for the house. He now led me into like I was some casual acquaintance. "Take your shoes off here," he said. Simone just had the floors done. I bent slowly, unzipping my walking shoes. The entryway gleamed. Expensive tile, some abstract painting I couldn't make sense of, and no place to put my coat. I held it in my hands. Simone came in from the kitchen with a wine glass in one hand and her phone in the other. "Lorraine, welcome," she said, giving me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We weren't sure which flight you were on." "I texted yesterday," I said. "Right." She nodded, already turning back toward the kitchen. "Well, we've got a full house this weekend. Neighborhood social tonight. Hope that's okay." Marcus took my coat without a word and hung it in a narrow closet by the door. Not the hall closet. That one was full of designer jackets and polished shoes. The kind you buy to match the kind of life you want people to believe you have. I walked into the living room. It was beautiful, I'll give them that. Neutral colors, sharp corners, everything arranged like a magazine spread. Not a single picture of Marcus as a boy. Not one photograph with me in it. On the fireplace mantel were 4 frames. Simone's parents in Martha's Vineyard. Simone's sister in Brooklyn. Simone's son from her first marriage at some prep school ceremony. Not even the new baby had a photo with Marcus. Only posed shots. Nothing warm. Nothing that breathed. Where should I put this? I held up the tin of sweet potato pie. "Oh, just leave it on the counter," Simone said, distracted. "We're doing a cleanse right now, but the kids might want some." The kids, Jalen, 12, from Simone's previous marriage, Marcus's stepchild. He peeked in, muttered a hello, and ran upstairs. He didn't know me. Had never spoken to me on the phone. And my own granddaughter, the baby, was asleep in some sleek white bassinet that looked more like a gadget than a crib. "We'll show you to the guest room," Marcus said. "Not your room. Not your home. Just a place to sleep." He led me down the hallway past a door with private office stenciled on it in tiny letters, like I was in some kind of corporate building. The guest room was clean, sparse, and cold. No books, no chair, just a bed and a small luggage stand like a hotel. On the nightstand sat a small card. "Welcome. Guests. Wi-Fi password. Monthouse 1. Monthouse." That was a new one. My last name was Mitchell. His last name was Mitchell. But somewhere between Memphis and money, he'd trimmed it down to something that fit better on a doorbell. "I'll unpack later," I said, sitting slowly on the edge of the bed. My legs needed a break. Marcus hovered for a moment, then said, "Just try to be relaxed tonight. It's mostly Simone's circle. You know, lawyers, investment people, that crowd." "Of course," I said. What I meant was, I understand. I'm not supposed to speak too much. Not supposed to say who I am. I'm just decoration. He left the room and closed the door gently behind him. I stayed sitting there, looking at the blank white walls. Then I opened my purse and checked for the envelope. Still there. The original deed. Because Marcus couldn't get a mortgage on his own, he'd needed me. My name was still on the ownership. Legally, This house was mine as much as his. In fact, more so. I'd paid the down payment in full. $240,000 from my savings. The money I'd built up over decades of 12-hour shifts, holiday overtime, and saying no to myself so I could say yes to him. He said it was just a formality. Just help me get started, Mama. It's our family's future. I believed him. I always believed him. I pressed the envelope flat in my lap, ran my hand over the top. Then I opened the flap and pulled out the document slowly, like it might burn me. I took a photo. Then I slid the deed back in and zipped my purse closed. Tomorrow I would go for a walk. Just to clear my head. I would take my time. And I would find someone who could help me remember how ownership really works. The next morning, the house was already alive with activity before I made it to the kitchen. Simone was doing something with fruit and yogurt in a tall blender while Marcus stood by the refrigerator scrolling through his phone. Neither of them looked up when I entered. "Morning," I said. Not too loud, not too soft. "Morning," Marcus replied automatically, eyes still on the screen. I walked to the counter and poured myself a cup of coffee from the machine. It was one of those sleek, modern types that looked like it needed a degree to operate. The coffee was thin and bitter, but I didn't complain. I sat quietly at the breakfast bar and watched. "We're heading out soon," Simone said without turning. "Farmer's market, then the park with the kids." "That sounds nice," I replied. "Maybe I'll take a walk around the neighborhood. Stretch my legs." Marcus finally looked up. "You sure you're okay with that? It's a pretty particular area. Just don't talk to anyone too long, okay?" I tilted my head slightly. "Why would I?" "No reason," he said quickly. "Just, people here can be a certain way." I nodded, pretending not to notice the way Simone glanced at him sharply, like maybe he'd said too much. I knew what he meant. A black woman my age, walking alone in pressed slacks and church shoes through a neighborhood where even the mailboxes had money. He was worried I'd seem out of place. That I'd seem like his out of place. After they left, I stood alone in the silent kitchen. The counters gleamed. The fridge hummed. The baby monitor blinked softly on the table. I picked up my coffee and walked through the rooms. I'd never been here before. Never invited. When Marcus bought the house a year ago, I was recovering from a fall and couldn't travel. And after that, he always had reasons. Too busy. Too much going on. Simone wasn't feeling well. The house wasn't ready. Now that I was finally here, I saw what ready meant. It meant perfect. Pristine. Controlled. It meant there was no room for me. In the hallway, I stopped in front of a series of black and white photos. Architectural shots, dramatic angles of bridges, skyline views. But no family photos. Not even of the baby. I opened the door to the laundry room. Inside, stacked appliances buzzed quietly. Next to them stood a tall cabinet. I tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside were files, envelopes, household paperwork. I spotted a familiar beige folder, one I recognized from the day he'd begged me to co-sign. I pulled it out. There, right on top, was the closing summary. Mortgage documents. The legal ownership statement. My name printed in full. Lorraine Mitchell. Below that, his name in smaller font. The second party. I slid the folder back into place. I wasn't looking for confirmation. I already had it. But something in me wanted to see it again. To remind myself that I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't being petty or dramatic. I had every right to be in this house. More than Simone. More than anyone. Later that afternoon, Simone returned with a canvas bag full of heirloom tomatoes and artisan bread. "We're having bruschetta for dinner," she announced like it was an invitation to a gala. "Hope you don't mind." "Sounds lovely," I said. "Do you need help?" She paused, like the question confused her. "Oh no, it's all under control." I watched her slice tomatoes with surgical precision. Every move deliberate. Everything in this house had an invisible label on it. Curated. Measured. Approved. After dinner, they invited a couple over from across the street. Greg and Patricia Holloway. He worked in private equity. She was on some community board. They brought a bottle of white wine and complimented the marble countertops and the fireplace. "And this is Lorraine," Simone said with a quick smile. "Marcus's family friend." Family friend. I felt it like a needle under the ribs. Quick, sharp, casual. But I didn't flinch. I smiled and offered Patricia a glass of wine. Let the word hang in the air. Let it settle into their impression of me like wallpaper glue. "So nice to meet you," Patricia said. "You're staying long?" "Just a few days," I replied. "It's always nice to visit places you've invested in." Her brows lifted slightly. "Oh, are you in real estate?" "You could say that," I said. "I helped acquire this property." Marcus coughed. Simone's hand stilled on the tomato bowl. Patricia laughed politely, clearly unsure if I was joking. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the deed photo open on my phone. I stared at my name. Not because I didn't remember it, but because I wanted to hold on to it. Like armor. I remembered when Marcus called, desperate and eager. "This is the one, Mama. This house. It's perfect. We just need a little help for the down payment. And the bank wants someone with better equity. It's only on paper. Just until I refinance." I said yes without hesitation. I always did. I cashed in bonds I'd been saving since my late husband passed. Took a hit on the taxes. I told myself it was worth it. I was building something for the next generation. But now, sitting in this pristine guest room, listening to my own son laugh downstairs with people who thought I was just a friend, I realized I hadn't built anything. I had just rented love. On a very short lease. The next morning, Simone greeted me with a schedule. "We'll be out most of the day. Soccer for Jalen, then a baby sensory class," she said, placing a neat list on the kitchen table like she was managing a guest at a retreat. "You're welcome to stay and relax." Relax. That meant stay out of the way. Don't be seen. Don't be heard. Marcus added, "There's food in the fridge if you're hungry. Just help yourself." As if I hadn't cooked every meal of his childhood from scratch. As if I didn't know how to feed myself. I nodded. "Of course. You two go enjoy yourselves." They left in a flurry of baby bags, strollers, and choreographed urgency. The door clicked shut, and silence fell over the house like a heavy curtain. I stood in the kitchen for a while, holding my coffee. Then I opened the refrigerator. It was full of green juices, containers labeled with calorie counts, pre-cut vegetables, and protein bars. Nothing that resembled food to me. Nothing warm. Nothing familiar. Back home, my fridge had leftover greens, cornbread wrapped in foil, a pitcher of sweet tea. Things with memory in them. I closed the fridge and walked back into the living room. I tried to feel like I belonged here. I sat on the sofa, picked up a glossy magazine, flipped through 3 pages, and set it back down. That's when I noticed it. A small gallery wall near the staircase. 6 framed photos in a perfect grid. Simone's family, of course. Her parents on a sailboat. Her son at a beach. Even the baby in a sepia-toned professional shoot. No photo of Marcus. No photo of me. Nothing to suggest he'd ever had a life before this one. I wandered upstairs slowly. My knees creaked, but I took my time. At the top, a long hallway stretched out, doors closed neatly on both sides. I knew which room was the baby's. I could hear the soft musical hum of a white noise machine. Another door was open slightly. Marcus's office. I paused. The door creaked as I pushed it wider. A clean desk, 2 monitors, a framed diploma from Columbia, and on the shelf, awards for consulting work. Not a single personal photograph. But in the corner, tucked into the bookshelf, was something familiar. A small wooden box. The one I'd given him after his father died. I walked over and opened it. Inside was a tiny photo of Marcus as a child, grinning with a missing tooth. And beneath it, a folded note. I recognized my handwriting. Never forget who you are. And never forget who stood with you when no one else did. Mama. He had kept it. Tears stung, sudden and sharp. I closed the box gently and placed it back. I walked downstairs and out into the backyard. The grass was clipped too short, the patio furniture too white. A sandbox sat untouched in a far corner, still wrapped in its shipping plastic. They were building a life that didn't include the mess of children, the softness of memory, the reality of family. Just then, the sliding door opened behind me. Marcus stepped out. "Oh, you're out here. Beautiful yard," I said. He looked around like he hadn't noticed it before. "Yeah, I guess it's nice." We stood in silence for a moment. Then I said it. "I saw the pictures inside." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Simone has a certain style." I noticed. "It's efficient." "Mama," he hesitated. "It's not that we don't appreciate everything you've done. You've been generous. Always. But this house is. We've worked hard for this. It's part of a certain life. You understand, right?" I turned slowly to look at him. "You mean the kind of life where people don't have mothers who wear old cardigans and bring sweet potato pie on a Greyhound budget?" "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not." He looked away, out over the empty sandbox. "Simone's parents are coming next week. We're throwing a small brunch. It's more her family's style." I waited. "I just think maybe it's best if you don't mention the deed." I hadn't planned to. He turned back to me. "Really?" "Of course. I wouldn't want to ruin the illusion." There was a pause. A long, empty one. Then he said it. The sentence that landed like a stone at the bottom of a dry well. "You know how people judge. You wouldn't want anyone thinking I didn't earn this house." And that was it. The truth. Finally. No ribbon on it. I looked at my son. Grown, polished, polite, and entirely unaware of the weight of his words. "I never wanted credit, Marcus," I said quietly. "I wanted connection." He shifted uncomfortably. "It's just complicated." "No," I said. "It's very simple." I went back inside, leaving him there on the patio, standing in the perfect yard he didn't want to share with the imperfect woman who raised him. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on the guest bed, hands folded over my stomach, and stared at the ceiling. I could hear the distant hum of a dishwasher, the occasional creak of pipes, and the rustle of wind against expensive glass. I thought of my own mother, who never had money to give me but gave me everything else. Her voice. Her strength. Her stubborn insistence that people deserve to be seen, not hidden. The way she'd press my hair on Sunday mornings and whisper hymns while the iron sizzled. The way she said my name like it was a blessing. And in that quiet house, I decided I wouldn't be hidden anymore. They dressed me up like I was a problem to be solved. Simone came into the guest room just after 5, holding a pale cardigan and a string of faux pearls. "I thought you might want to wear something lighter," she said, like it was a suggestion. But it wasn't. I looked at the soft beige sweater, the kind that disappeared into the background. "I brought my navy dress," I said. Simone smiled tightly. "It's just that tonight's crowd is a little formal. You'll feel more comfortable in this." I took it without argument. Let her think she was winning something. Downstairs, the dining room table had been extended. Glasses sparkled. Napkins folded like swans. Music played softly from invisible speakers, some jazz playlist that had all the notes but none of the soul. The whole house smelled like rosemary and citrus. Not a single dish was homemade. All catered. Labeled. Precise. Marcus emerged from the office in a button-down shirt the color of dust and kissed Simone on the cheek. "Everything looks perfect," he murmured. She beamed. Then she turned to me. So, just one little thing. When people ask, just say you're an old family friend visiting from Memphis. Not that we're ashamed, she added quickly. It's just simpler that way. I stared at her. Simpler. You know. Marcus chimed in. Simone's family has a certain dynamic with appearances. This neighborhood is full of very curated social circles. People make assumptions. And what would they assume exactly? I asked. That your mother flew across the country to crash your party? He gave a short laugh. Don't be like that, Mama. I wasn't being like anything. I was just seeing it all clearly now. The doorbell rang. Simone jumped slightly, then smoothed her hair. Okay. Showtime. One by one, the neighbors trickled in. Men in pastel sweaters. Women in tasteful heels. All of them with the same glossy smile. They brought artisan candles, wine from local vineyards, compliments about the countertops. And who's this lovely lady? One of the women asked, gesturing toward me. Simone stepped in quickly. This is Lorraine. She's a long-time family friend. She knew Marcus back when he was little. Oh, how sweet, the woman said. You're practically an aunt. Aunt Rain, Simone said with a little laugh. Exactly. I nodded, smiled, took a sip of wine I didn't like and listened to them talk about gym memberships, school districts, and boat clubs. Marcus moved among the guests like a trained host, laughing just enough, listening just enough, bragging only when invited. Simone watched him like a coach from the sidelines. The whole thing felt like a stage play, and I was just a prop. At one point, I excused myself to use the bathroom and stopped by the kitchen to refill my glass. Marcus followed me in. You're doing great, he said quietly. Thanks for playing along. Is that what I'm doing? I asked. Playing. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know it's awkward, but you know how important this is to Simone. She grew up around money. Reputation means something in her world. And what about your world, Marcus? He hesitated. This is my world now. I nodded slowly. Understood. When I returned to the dining room, they were talking about house values, how much their properties had appreciated. Someone mentioned the market rate of the homes on the east side. Oh, but this house, Simone said brightly. We got it at just the right moment. Before the area spiked. It was a smart move. Good timing, one of the guests agreed. I sat down quietly and listened. Marcus said nothing about who made the purchase possible, who paid the down payment, who co-signed the mortgage. It didn't fit the narrative. I wasn't part of the story they were telling about themselves. Later, when dessert was served, tiny lemon tarts in fragile glass cups, I caught Marcus's eye across the table. For a second, he looked like a boy again. Nervous. Uncertain. Waiting to see if I'd embarrass him. I held his gaze and smiled. Not kindly. Not unkindly. Just enough. Enough to remind him I wasn't forgotten. I was quiet, but not erased. When the guests finally left, one of the men patted Marcus on the shoulder. Lovely evening. And what a charming aunt you have. So gracious. Thanks, Marcus said. She is. I went upstairs before he could say more. Slipped out of the cardigan. Took off the pearls. Back in my nightgown, I opened my phone again. Looked at the photo of the deed. My name. His name. The value. I stared at it for a long time. Then I clicked share and sent it to my lawyer's private email. Not with a message. Not yet. Just insurance. Just in case this little play of theirs ever needed a rewrite. The house was dark but not quiet. Somewhere in the walls, the plumbing side. The refrigerator clicked in its sleep. A motion sensor light blinked faintly in the hallway. I lay on the guest bed with my hands folded over the blanket, staring at the ceiling where the shadow of the ceiling fan passed back and forth like a slow pendulum. I couldn't sleep. Not because I wasn't tired. I was. My feet ached from standing too long in shoes meant for show, not comfort. My back ached from sitting too straight for too many hours. My jaw ached from all the smiling. No, it wasn't pain that kept me awake. It was the quiet realization that something inside me had shifted. I remembered a time, not so long ago, though it feels like another life, when Marcus was small enough to sleep curled against me on the couch. He used to run to the door when I came home from work, arms outstretched, face lit up. There were no swans folded from napkins back then. No reputation to protect. Only the two of us in a small apartment in South Memphis with second-hand furniture and mismatched plates, eating dinner on the floor because we didn't have a table yet. And he was proud of me then. He used to tell people, cashiers, neighbors, the school secretary, "That's my mama. She takes care of sick people. She helps everybody." Now I was a family friend, an aunt, a liability. I turned to my side, trying not to make the bed creak. Outside the window, the wind had picked up. The neat rows of hedges swayed slightly under the moonlight. Somewhere down the block, a motion-triggered floodlight came on. In that pale glow, I saw something I hadn't noticed earlier, a small plaque by the edge of the lawn. The Mont residence. Engraved in brushed metal, anchored into the ground with pride. It wasn't even his name. Just Mont, shorter, crisper, easier to say at cocktail parties. Marcus Mitchell had been trimmed, polished, and sanded down until he fit better into country club conversations. It was almost funny. Almost. I reached for the drawer of the nightstand. Inside was a hotel-style notepad and pen. I pulled it out and wrote in small, steady letters. "It's not bitterness. It's math." Then I drew a line down the middle of the page. On one side, money sent, years worked, hours given, meals made, papers signed. On the other, phone calls received, invitations offered, thanks spoken. The left side was full. The right side had nothing but air. I folded the page, tucked it into my wallet behind my driver's license, and turned off the lamp. But I still couldn't sleep. I thought about the conversation we hadn't had. The one where Marcus might have looked me in the eye and said, "I'm sorry. I forgot where I came from. I forgot who stood with me." But that conversation wouldn't happen. Not because he was cruel. No, he wasn't. Marcus had simply grown comfortable. Comfortable with the benefits of my presence and the invisibility of my identity. Comfortable accepting my sacrifices without ever questioning what they cost me. Comfortable not having to thank me. Not having to remember. And I'd allowed it. For years, I let myself believe that love, even lopsided love, was enough. But I was tired now. Not just in my bones, but deeper. In the parts of me that had carried hope for too long without rest. I'd given him this house. I'd watched him host his new life in it. I'd heard the careful omissions, the revised introductions, the tidy edits to history. I'd smiled through all of it. But now I was awake. Fully awake. And I couldn't unsee it. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood slowly. Walked to the closet where my suitcase sat and opened the small front pocket. The envelope was still there. I took it out again, unfolded the deed, and stared at the date. September 22nd. The day we closed on the house. The day I wired the money. The day I bought him the future he didn't want to share with me. And then I noticed something I'd almost forgotten. The deed wasn't just a name. It wasn't just ownership. It included a clause, a line added by my lawyer at my request. No changes in ownership, refinancing, or sale may be executed without written consent of the primary deed holder, Lorraine Mitchell. He couldn't even sell this house without my approval. And suddenly, I felt calm. Not vindictive. Not angry. Just clear. There would be no shouting. No letters. No drama. Just the slow, steady turning of the wheel back into my hands. It was still my house. And he had forgotten what that meant. By morning, I had made a decision. Not loud, not theatrical. Just quiet and final, like a door closing with a soft click. The house was empty again. Marcus and Simone had taken the baby to a music development session. Jalen was at school. I stood in the kitchen, still in my robe, drinking coffee that tasted like cardboard and planning my steps. First, confirm the document. The original, not just the copy in my purse. I knew where it was. I had seen the beige folder in the cabinet in the laundry room, tucked between home warranties and appliance manuals. At the time, I hadn't wanted to touch it. Now I wanted nothing more. I walked across the house slowly. Not sneaking, just moving like I belonged. Which, legally, I did. The laundry room was quiet. The dryer had stopped running. I opened the cabinet, reached for the folder. Inside, nothing had changed. The original deed, signed and notarized. My name first, his second. My signature, dated in ink I remembered buying from a small store in Germantown. The kind of pen you don't throw away. I placed the folder on the counter and opened my phone. No hesitation. No rehearsal. Just one photo. Clear, centered, complete. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I emailed it to the same address I'd used the night before. My lawyer's private inbox. Reference only. I didn't add a message. Didn't need one. I closed the folder and placed it exactly where I found it. Not because I was hiding anything, but because some steps should be quiet. Not sneaky, just deliberate. Next, make space. I walked back to the guest room and packed a small tote bag with my essentials. Wallet, keys, phone charger, my reading glasses, and a single change of clothes. I left the rest in the closet, hanging undisturbed. The suitcase stayed by the wall. The bed remained made. I didn't plan to run. I planned to move with intention. I made myself a sandwich with the cold roast chicken in the fridge, ate standing up, looking out the window at the street full of driveways and identical mailboxes. At noon, the door opened. Simone's voice carried in. Let's put her down for a nap before she loses it. They were back. I walked to the front hallway and met them just as Marcus was setting the baby's car seat down. Would you mind if I had a little time here on my own? I asked. Just for a day or two. You've been so generous. I thought I'd stay and enjoy the quiet after you go to that resort thing you mentioned. Simone looked at Marcus. He blinked. You mean while we're at the water park? It's just the weekend, Mama. Exactly, I said. I'll clean up after myself. Won't be any trouble. Simone gave a quick, rehearsed smile. Of course. That would be lovely. It's just, we hadn't planned to leave the baby with you. Oh, heavens no, I said lightly. You'll all go. I'll have the house to myself. A little retreat. I could use the rest. Marcus nodded slowly. Well, sure. I mean, yeah, that works. I could feel him calculating. The baby monitor. The alarm system. The possibility of me doing something that might require explanation to Simone's parents later. But he smiled anyway. You deserve a break, he said. After all you've done for us. Funny. That was the first time he'd said anything close to that since I arrived. They left the next morning in a rush of bags and sunscreen and instructions about garbage days and thermostat settings. Simone kissed the baby 3 times before Marcus finally said, Come on, we're going to miss the check-in window. I stood in the doorway, waving, holding the key fob like any trusted guest. Then I closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned my back against the smooth white paint. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of the sound of truth returning to the walls. I walked into the living room, sat in the armchair I hadn't dared to touch all week, kicked off my shoes and stretched my legs. This was not revenge. This was not an outburst. This was restoration. In the afternoon, I called a car service and arranged for a courier to deliver a copy of the deed to a law office 2 towns over. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't warn him. And I didn't feel cruel. I felt clean. At sunset, I made myself tea. Real tea, with leaves. I found a small ceramic mug pushed to the back of the cupboard, one with a crack near the handle, probably used once and set aside. It was perfect. I sat on the back patio as the sky turned gold and listened to the hum of sprinklers kicking on in unison down the street. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. Tonight I would enjoy the home I'd paid for, the one where, for once, I wasn't a guest. The sun rose without asking permission. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad and a pen I'd found in Simone's drawer. Monogrammed, of course. At 9:01 a.m., I dialed the number. 3 rings. Then the familiar voice. Hayes and Porter, attorneys at law. Gloria, I said calmly. It's Lorraine Mitchell. She hesitated a beat. Well, my goodness. It's been what, 3 years since we spoke? Still in Memphis. Actually, I said, I'm in Westchester. Visiting family. Temporarily. And how can I help? I glanced at the photo on the fridge, the only one with Marcus in it, cropped tightly between Simone and the stepchild. He wasn't smiling. I'd like to initiate a reassessment of property control, I said. Regarding a home I co-own. Go on. I laid it out simply. That I had funded the house. That I held majority equity. That Marcus's name was listed only for mortgage eligibility. And that I retained controlling interest. You never transferred ownership? She asked. No. And you have a copy of the deed? I sent it to your inbox last night, I replied. Subject line. Reference. She paused. Well, that simplifies things. She gave a little exhale, the kind lawyers give when they're trying not to sound impressed or judgmental. What do you want, Lorraine? Just tell me plainly. I want the house legally reassigned under my sole name. I want full authority. Unambiguous. Final. I don't intend to sell it, but I do intend to make some changes. Do you anticipate resistance? I sipped my coffee. He doesn't know yet. But yes. Gloria didn't ask why. She didn't need to. She'd met Marcus once years ago, in a conference room during a matter involving a failed startup idea and a loan he forgot he'd taken. She had sized him up in 10 minutes. All right, she said. You're still the majority deed holder, and we have leverage. I'll prepare a transfer declaration. Once you sign, we can initiate formal reassignment. If he challenges, it's a civil matter, but we'll win. You want it quiet. As quiet as dignity allows. Understood. I'll email a draft this afternoon. We hung up. I sat in silence for a long while, staring at the open space of the living room. The expensive furniture, the curated color palette, the faint scent of lemon cleanser. None of it mattered. Not anymore. At noon, I opened Marcus's desk drawer. I wasn't snooping. I was securing what I'd earned. Inside, beneath a stack of magazines, I found the spare set of keys. Garage, office, the fireproof box under the stairs. I used the garage key first. Walked through, examining the details. Boxes labeled Christmas, baby gear, old tech. One bin said Mama, miscellaneous. It was dusty. I opened it. Inside were a few framed photos of Marcus and me. One from his high school graduation. Another from the small beach trip we'd taken when he was 9, the one he always said was the best day. A recipe card in my handwriting. A birthday card I'd sent 2 years ago. Unopened. I closed the lid and left it on the workbench. Then I went to the fireproof box. Documents, insurance, medical files, a folder labeled estate, Simone, her trust, her legacy plan. Not a mention of me. Back in the kitchen, I poured myself another coffee. I looked out at the backyard and thought about how many versions of myself had lived in Marcus's mind. There was the version who cooked and worked and bent herself into shapes that fit his needs. The version who signed checks. The version who stayed quiet. Now he would meet the one who remembered what she owned. That evening, Gloria's draft arrived. Clean, precise, no unnecessary language. A quiet assertion of what was already mine. I signed digitally. Sent it back. A final message from Gloria followed. Once filed, he'll receive formal notice. But if you'd rather tell him yourself, you have until Tuesday. I closed the laptop. Turned off the light. Let him have 2 more days of his illusion. Let him sip wine on the patio of some overpriced resort, thinking he'd built a perfect life. Let him think his mother stayed in the background. I would wait. And then I would knock on the front door of the life he'd excluded me from. Not as a guest, but as the owner. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. I spent my last night alone in that house the way I wanted to. I cooked. Not a performance meal, not quinoa salad or hand-cut garnishes, but real food. I found flour, butter, eggs, made biscuits from memory, roasted a chicken with thyme and lemon, made collard greens with smoked turkey neck the way my mother taught me, low and slow, with a splash of vinegar. I set the table for 1. Used the good dishes, the ones Simone said were only for company. I suppose I counted. For once. I poured a glass of red wine from a bottle they'd tucked in the back. The cheap one, not the wine she'd set aside for guests. That was fine. I never liked expensive wine anyway. It always tasted like effort. I ate slowly. No TV, no music. Just the sound of silverware on porcelain and my own breath, calm and steady. After dinner, I walked through the house again, room by room. In the baby's nursery, I sat in the rocking chair for a moment. It was brand new, barely used, the kind that made no noise. When Marcus was born, I had a wooden rocker that groaned every time I moved. He used to fall asleep to that rhythm. Groan, creak, rock, creak. I could hear it still. I hummed something, an old gospel tune my mother used to sing while she ironed. Precious Lord, take my hand. The baby wasn't there, but the walls were listening. The next morning, I dressed with purpose. Not in anything fancy, just slacks, a pressed shirt, and the shoes I wore to church back home. Polished, reliable shoes. For walking into rooms where decisions get made. At 10 a.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened it to a woman in a dark blazer, tidy hair, and soft eyes behind wire-frame glasses. Lorraine Mitchell. Yes. I'm Denise Carter. I'm here on behalf of Hayes and Porter. She stepped inside with quiet confidence, carrying a slim leather folder and a tablet. Her presence didn't disturb the house. She fit into the silence. We sat at the dining table. I'd cleared it of Simone's decorative candles and the unread copy of Architectural Digest that always sat open to a random page. Denise opened the folder. This is a standard reassignment packet. We've pre-filled based on the deed and equity documents Ms. Hayes provided. You're listed as primary grantor and funding party. All we need is the signature to initiate filing. I nodded. She slid the tablet toward me. Electronic is fastest. We'll handle delivery of the physical originals. I signed. Each page blinked softly as my name appeared. She watched without commentary. Just quiet assurance. When I finished, she tapped a few buttons. Done, she said. As of today, legal title reassignment is in progress. You'll receive confirmation by Friday. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. This is a summary packet. If you choose to speak directly with Mr. Mitchell, you'll have the updated ownership statement. I walked her to the door. She gave me a polite smile and stepped into the sunlight. Back inside, I sat at the table for a long time. The envelope still in my hand. The house utterly still. And then, like instinct, I rose and walked to the study, opened Marcus's drawer, took out a pen, and wrote a note. Marcus. You asked me not to tell the neighbors I was your mother. So I didn't. You asked me not to talk about the house. So I didn't. You didn't ask me to sign it away. So I didn't. You asked me to help you build a life. So I did. I won't take more than what's already mine. I won't ask for thanks. But I won't disappear. Love. Mama. I folded the note and placed it on his desk under the framed certificate from Columbia. Then I placed the summary packet on top, angled neatly. That afternoon, I opened all the doors. Front, back, garage. Let air move through. I sat outside and watched the wind sweep the hedges. Listened to the creak of the wooden gate, the low hum of life returning. The neighbors wouldn't notice anything had changed. But everything had. I retrieved the box labeled Mama, Miscellaneous, from the garage. Took out the photo of us at the beach, the one he always said was the best day, and placed it on the hallway console where everyone would see it. Then I packed my things. Not to flee. Just to move forward. That last night, I slept in the master bedroom. I had the keys. I had the name. I had earned it. The filing was processed at 9:43 a.m. on a Wednesday. I received a notification in my inbox. Plain. Clinical. Efficient. A scanned copy of the reassigned title deed. My name listed singularly under legal owner. No fanfare. No calls. Just one sentence from Gloria in the body of the email. It's done. I was back in Memphis by then, sitting at my own kitchen table with the screen open before me, letting the words settle. Not in triumph. Not in anger. Just in balance. They returned on a Sunday. Simone stepped through the door first, her voice already elevated from the baby's whimpering. Can you get the diaper bag? It's got the breast milk. Marcus followed, keys still in hand, dragging a suitcase behind him. The wheels thudded softly against the entry tiles. He called out, Mama? We're back. No answer. Simone frowned. Maybe she's still asleep. Marcus checked the guest room. Empty. Bed made. Pillows arranged the way she'd found them. Guest towels folded on the bench. He opened the closet. Empty hangers. In the kitchen, Simone placed the cooler on the counter and glanced around. She didn't text or leave a note. I don't know, Marcus muttered, pulling out his phone. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages. He turned toward the hallway and noticed the change first. Subtle, but unmistakable. The framed photo on the console, him and his mother at the beach, the wind lifting his hair, her hand resting gently on his back. He froze. Simone, he said. Come here. She appeared behind him. What? He pointed. That wasn't there before. She studied it. Did she put that out? He didn't answer. He walked down the hallway, heart thudding now. Something was off. Not wrong, just arranged. In the office, he found it. The note, sitting on his desk, folded, tidy, underneath his framed degree. He read it in silence. Simone stood in the doorway. What is it? Marcus didn't look up. He picked up the second sheet. The summary packet. The deed, reassigned. His name gone. Only hers. Simone stepped forward, saw the heading. Wait, what the hell is this? Marcus sat down heavily in the chair. The house around him felt suddenly different. Smaller. Not colder, not yet, but altered. Like the ground had shifted a fraction of an inch beneath the floorboards. She never signed it over, he said softly. What? She never signed away her share. She was always the owner. Simone reached for the papers, scanned them. No. That's not. This can't be legal. It is. She said it was just temporary. She never said that, he snapped. I did. I told you it was temporary. Simone's mouth opened, then closed. She paid for it, he said. The down payment. The equity. She signed the mortgage to get it through underwriting. And now what? Simone asked, voice rising. She just takes it back. He shook his head. She's not taking anything. She's reminding us. They stood there in silence. The baby monitor clicked to life somewhere upstairs. A quiet wail, distant and small. Simone turned, stormed toward the staircase. "You better fix this," she said over her shoulder. Marcus sat in the office for a long time, note in hand. He read it again and again. He tried to be angry, tried to feel betrayed. But instead, he felt something else. The memory of his mother's hand on his back at that beach. The sound of her voice telling bedtime stories. The warmth of a bowl of greens waiting after a hard day at school. She hadn't shouted, hadn't stormed, hadn't begged. She had simply reminded him of the truth. He folded the note slowly, held it in his lap. Then he picked up the phone. But he didn't dial. Not yet. 3 days later, Marcus called. I let it ring once before answering. "Hey, Mama," he said. His voice was quiet, hesitant. "I got the documents," he added. "The full reassignment. It's real." "Yes," I said. There was a long silence. Then, "You could have, I don't know, talk to me first." "I tried," I said. "Years ago." He exhaled. "I didn't think you'd really do it." "I didn't think I had to," I replied. "Until I did." He didn't argue. I could hear the sounds of the house in the background, a baby's soft gurgle, a microwave beeping, a dog barking outside. Then his voice again, softer. "You left the photo out." "Yes." "And the note." "I did." He paused again. "Thank you for not embarrassing me." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Oh, Marcus, I didn't do this to embarrass you. I did it to remind you." A quiet beat. "Zuri's in school now," he said suddenly. "First grade. Top of her reading group." "I know," I said. "She sent me a drawing." He was quiet. Then, with visible effort, "What happens to the house now?" I let the pause linger before answering. "It goes into a trust," I said. "For Zuri. I've signed it over. She'll inherit it when she's old enough." Another silence. Longer this time. That's fair," he said. Finally. "I mean, it's more than fair." "Yes," I said. "It is." We didn't say much after that. Later that week, I received a package. No note. Just a small photo frame. The same one from the hallway console. Us at the beach. I placed it on the shelf near my front window, next to the one of my husband in his uniform, next to the ceramic handprint Zuri had made in preschool. A few weeks later, Zuri called. "Grandma?" she asked. "Yes, love. Daddy says you gave me a house." I laughed. "Not yet. But one day if you want it." She was quiet. Thinking. "Will it still have the big bathtub?" "If your parents don't change it, yes." "Can I paint my room pink?" "You can paint it anything you want." She giggled. Then, seriously, "Will you live there with me?" "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "But I'll be nearby. Promise." "I promise." She paused. "You're not mad at Daddy anymore?" "No," I said. And I meant it. Not anymore. Because it wasn't about anger. It never had been. It was about memory. About dignity. About putting my name back where it belonged and making sure the next generation knew where things came from. So that one day, when Zuri walked through those doors, she'd know the truth. Not just about the house, but about the woman who made sure it still stood. The days grew quieter after that. Not emptier, just quieter. Like a room after a good conversation, when everything important has already been said. I tended to my little garden again. Took walks to the post office. Baked more often. Sent letters. Zuri wrote back sometimes, in crooked bold letters with drawings in the margins. Once she sent me a picture of the house drawn in pink crayon with stick figures outside. She labeled them. "This is me," she wrote over the girl in the window. "This is my house." And then, below it in smaller print, "Grandma's house too." I kept it on my fridge. Marcus didn't visit. But he called, on birthdays, on holidays, sometimes just to check in. He never mentioned the deed again. Neither did I. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about not vanishing. Simone never called. That was fine. We'd both said enough. And the house, that big, careful house, stood where it always had. A little quieter now, maybe. A little more honest. Marcus stopped calling it the Mont residence. The plaque disappeared from the lawn one day. No announcement. Just gone. I was told Zuri asked about it, and Marcus said, "We don't need it anymore." I liked that. One spring afternoon, I sat on my porch in Memphis with a blanket over my knees and watched the wind carry magnolia petals down the sidewalk. The sun was warm, not harsh, not demanding, just there. Like I was. And if someone were to ask what happened, how a mother could fly across the country and leave with more than she arrived with, I'd tell them this. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes love has teeth. Sometimes the quietest woman in the room owns the floorboards under everyone's feet. And sometimes, the house does remember who built it.